Welcome back. Now, as anyone who's climbed the leadership greasy pole in any organisation will tell you, talk is cheap, actions speaketh louder than words. Short, though, of a mentor or three to instill the suite of principles behind standout leadership, just how do you grasp the core values at play? Well, my next guest's been dubbed the CEO Whisperer, perhaps understandably so when you consider her latest book, True Leadership, The Source of Success, published by Dimmicks Publishing, the first indeed to come from Dimmicks' new online assisted self-publishing venture. And Lisa joins me now. And Lisa, just to clarify at the top, because I did go into the break flagging you being the life coach, key distinction is actually leadership coach, as you point out to me. And that, if anything, is a subtle difference, but what really has been your focus and what led to this? What gave you the inspiration?
I've been around leaders all my life. I grew up with leaders. My father was a CFO of a major organization in the U.S., and I noticed things even when I was younger. And the conversation for leadership and the importance, the impact that leaders have, not just on organizations, but on communities, has always been something that's stuck with me. And I noticed behaviors. I noticed behaviors of people who really seemed to know what they were doing and seemed to get it. And then there were behaviors of people that seemed obviously misled. And it really consolidated into a burning question of what is it about great leaders? What do great leaders have that others don't? And that was the start of the research. That's what got me into looking at what are the differences and asking questions of leaders in Australia. And it was potentially going to be a global study. But what I found after about 7 or 8 people is that they all said the same thing. Even though they had their own expression of leadership, what they said at a core, who they were at a core in essence, was essentially the same.
How much did failure, and does failure, play a role in that old idea of if at first you don't succeed, try and try again? Because it's taglined the source of success, but it's like keeping your millions. You've got to be able to lose a few along the way and still pick up the pieces, right?
Well, it actually doesn't matter whether you succeed or whether you fail. It matters whether you learn. So the thing about successful people, there's actually really 3 key things, actually 4 key things about successful people. The first is that what they're doing is congruent to their values, talents, and interests. And it's at that moment, what they're doing is something they're excited about, they're inspired by, and they're good at. They're really good at. But more importantly, they're learning. They're willing to learn. So whether they fail or whether they succeed, they learn from those events, and they take them forward. They take those learnings forward into their next venture, into their next business, their next role.
Does that often, though, have almost a counterproductive effect of, because it worked there, I've got it in the front of my mind for the next crisis, and if you're that unbendable, maybe that strict approach that worked in one situation just doesn't have direct application. I suppose what I'm saying is there's got to be an inbuilt flexibility as well alongside that, right?
Absolutely, and it comes back to the other part of what has a great leader be so successful is they consistently take action with integrity. And I want to qualify that because integrity can be seen as something moralistic. And in this case, the way I'd like to define it is that it's, first of all, doing what you said you would do, fulfilling on your promises when you said you would, both to yourself and to others. But even more importantly, is doing what's appropriate at the moment, doing what's correct. Again, not in the moralistic sense, but correct. And if you can learn from your past, it's not about that worked before and I'm going to do that again. It's really looking at who was I being, what was working, the dynamics, the people, and then applying those learnings to the next one, to the next stage, to the next event. And it may be that you take different actions, you have different thinking, but the foundations are what you bring forward.
One of the beauties of the book, and it's keying off just what you've said there, is that you're taking the principles, but then, as you've said at the top, you're actually going and talking one-on-one with people who have actually applied this. Let's understand one of the leaders, Anne Sherry, who, you know, gets significant mention in the book, of course, Carnival Group, Carnival Australia, but, you know, of late, the big issue for Anne has been on a bigger footing. It's been the Costa Concordia, a response, a persuasion as well, because that features in your writing. You know, how do you carry people with you, even in times of crisis? What has I suppose, been unique about Anne?
Well, Anne speaks from a very clear core. So Anne is congruent. And she is a leader. She cares about people. She cares about her people, both within and without the organization. So she takes actions with complete integrity inside of that care. So she ensures that she's in communication with the right people. She ensures that the people around her are taking the right steps. She has no control over what the captain did. But what she does have control of is her response and her communication and her assurances and the actions that she can take within her organization.
And she's exploited social media with aplomb on that front, right?
Well, she has, because what and I don't know, because I haven't spoken with Anne, but I can only assume based on having met her, that her concerns would be for the people, would be primarily for the people involved.
Of course, she comes from a banking background. It's been relevant this week because we talked job losses in the finance sector and making unpopular decisions. Back on that remark about integrity, so putting herself in the situation where her own people, and I'm rewinding the tape here, and just pretending that she would be doing what she did do in today's environment. How do you suspect that decision can be justified to let go of workers, where some CEOs have said this week, actually, no, we'll productively still keep who we've got, but take a different path?
CEO chair is a very lonely one. And in these times, it's quite evident, because they see things. They see the whole of the picture. We only see a very small part of it. We see what we see through the media. If we're a shareholder, we might get the shareholder reports. But the CEO really has to see it all. It's incumbent upon them to look at the big view and to consider all the variations and consider all the factors involved and the people being affected. And it's a hard choice. It's a very hard choice.
Because the persuasion at that point that you talk about is as much about external communication, surely, as internal. So what about those CEOs who have a no-comment policy? And that's arguably something that's been put on them from people who know it all and communications, but we can think of notable examples there.
Absolutely. But again, going back to that whole notion of congruence and where their allegiances lie and what it is that they are looking to achieve in that particular instant. You know, a CEO that says no comment, I have a very hard time about really judging them, because each and every one of them, I know from having spoken with them, their situation is quite difficult. Yeah. And when they're saying no comment, they've got people leaning on them saying, listen, you can't speak about that, because if you say this, it's going to be politicized, it's going to be picked up and spoken about over and over and over again. So everything they say...
But are you subservient at that point to their wisdom, or do you believe that you've got to where you've got? And think of Chris Roberts, deal with all issues from an open mind. Cochlear, they've had to deal with that of late. There are bionic implants, you know, coming offline, share price under pressure. That was certainly an open and frank discussion.
Absolutely. And listen, Chris Roberts, his attitude is you open up the blinds, you let the sunlight in, you air things out. He doesn't have any purple elephants sitting in the room that he doesn't deal with. And you can see it in the shareholder returns. You can see it in the fact that the share prices have risen, and that he has shareholder confidence. Even though Cochlear has had issues, look, every company is going to have issues. There is nothing in this world that is perfect and that always comes off perfectly. We've seen that with technology all the time. It's not what happens, it's your response to it. It's a company's response, it's the leader's response.
Yeah, think Michael Luscombe. You talk about him, former head of Woolworths, and of course having to deliver a profit downgrade in tough times where that stock had been on song. You talk about being responsible for your power and position, and again, when do you abrogate that? And when do you hold steady? How to decide on that front?
It's again about being, first of all, being true to yourself and remaining congruent at the core to the company values, to your own values, and then really making the right decision at the right time and being consultative. You know, one of the key characteristics of a great leader is that they are consultative. They do look to the people, they get the right people around them, and then they have the conversations they need to have. They reach out to them if there's any doubt in their mind, and they really get it straight and they get it right.
How does it square with somebody like Bill Gates from Microsoft, who would say, you know, and when he was asked, why are you so good? Because he said, I hire people smarter than me. but when do you still take ownership on an issue? Where's the tipping point, typically, that requires a CEO to say, well, you might know more than I know, but buck does stop with me?
Look, I'll take a line from Naomi Simpson of Red Balloon, who's also in the study, which is that if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And that's it. Ultimately, a leader knows that it's up to them. They could have great people around them, but at the end of the day, the buck does stop with them. And that's why the leadership chair is a lonely one, because ultimately they make the decision. They're the one who's going to be on page one. So Bill Gates and everybody else, they're smart to have great people around them. They're very smart, but they also know ultimately they're responsible. They're the ones.
Is there something generationally about the people that you spoke with that captures a certain moment in time but makes you wonder to yourself, does the next wave have what it takes? Is there that willingness to listen, to be mentored? Do these people go on a mentor, typically? Or do they take that knowledge and, in a sense, it's squandered beyond the role?
No, the people I've met, one of the things is they were very concerned about passing that knowledge down. They were very interested that this is not something that is unique to them, because there's that, it's not an ego situation. It's not about that they want to shine their light. It really is about we as a company succeeding. And that was one of the key issues with the leaders that I found, is that they said the word we a lot. And they referenced success in terms of, for them, success was about the company, is about the people succeeding. So
and it's almost, yeah, it's adopting that language that you would say typically marks those leaders out from the pack. Whereas we tend to say what? Whereas they use we.
I.
Right.
You know, when something goes well, a great leader says, we did it. Or, you all did it. You know, and somebody who's really caught up in their own need for success says, well, I did it.
Okay. Lisa, it's inspiring, and it's kind of unique to have got that view from a uniquely Australian perspective as well. Appreciate your insights. Best of luck with the book.
Thank you.
Lisa Rubinstein there, true leadership, the source of success uncovered and unpacked for you. That's our show. Thanks for your company. We'll see you in 7 days.